Today we're taking a look at the Sony a6100. Thanks to Cameracraft in Rockford, Illinois for letting me try this camera out at their shop. I'll be comparing this camera to the Canon EOS M50. They have quite a few similarities in their feature set, so we're going to look at these two cameras together. We'll be looking at the cameras from a hybrid perspective. Basically that means photo and video work at the same time. So if you're into both, I think these two cameras will be a nice fit. If you're just getting started, you want something lower end and this spectrum of cameras that can do both very nicely. Both cameras have the 24 megapixel APS-C size sensor. Of course, one is Sony, one is Canon. Canon has the dual pixel autofocus, but Sony's autofocus is extremely fast and definitely improved over their 6000 camera. I really don't think you'll have any concerns with autofocus in either camera. Keep in mind that the Sony is newer. This 24 megapixel sensor that is in the Sony is in their a6400 and the 6600, so you'll be getting the same image quality between those three cameras. On the photo side of things, I don't think you'll find any issues with either camera while taking photos. The general layout of the two cameras is similar in some ways. On the top you've got the mode dial and also one dial for adjusting settings. With the Sony you have the on-off switch right by the shutter button, but with the Canon there's an additional switch. Either camera will work nicely with one hand, so you can turn on the camera, turn off the camera, and press the shutter with that one hand. Looking at the size of the two cameras, they're both similar. They're not super large in either direction, but the Canon of course has that large bump on the top for the viewfinder. With the Sony, it's integrated into the side, but either way, it will depend on you and how you prefer your camera to be laid out. So you want to try them in person if you can and just see which one works out better. Both cameras do have a viewfinder, however with the Sony it's not great quality. It's around 1.4 megapixels. It looks okay, it's good that it's in there at all. With the Canon it adds an extra megapixel in there, so 2.4 million, and it's relatively decent. I wouldn't say that one's great either, but it works well enough and I'm definitely used to it. I did a quick test with the sensor and the viewfinders with both cameras to see how quickly they switch between the screen and the viewfinder, so I was holding my finger to each viewfinder and then taking it off and seeing how quickly. I do think the Sony is faster with switching automatically between the screen and the viewfinder. With the back screens, you definitely have a different implementation on each camera. With the Canon, you have that flip out screen that fully articulates, and with the Sony, it's a flip up 180 degrees. You do have a lot of range with the Sony, but if you're trying to shoot verticals, I think the Canon setup would be better. I did have the Sony at +1 brightness on the screen, so just keep that in mind, and with the Canon I have a matte screen protector. Sony's touchscreen implementation is very limited in this camera, like all of their cameras. You can't change settings with the touchscreen, however you can touch to focus. With the Canon M50 you have a full touch implementation. That means you can change settings, change pretty much anything you want. It's like a smartphone. Both cameras do have a microphone port, so with the a6100 you're going to be able to add an additional microphone for vlogging or any other type of filming that you want to do with a nice microphone. However, just keep in mind that when you flip the screen upwards fully to do vlogging, you're going to have an issue with placing your microphone, so you're going to need some type of bracket system to place your microphone on the camera. With the M50 you don't have that issue because of how it's set up. I've used quite a few different Sony cameras, but I don't use them long enough to really get used to their controls, so it took me quite a while to figure out how to get to certain settings, how to adjust certain settings. You have the top dial for adjustments of whatever mode you're in, like aperture priority. Also you have the back dial, which can adjust a second setting. The FN button is very important on the Sony camera. That allows you to access a lot of features without going into the main menu, like what type of autofocus setting you want to use, or a 2-second timer, stuff like that. The hand grip on the Sony a6100 is pretty decent, however I do prefer the M50. A lot of this is up to personal preference. With the a6100 it's wider but it's shorter. With the M50 it's thinner but it's longer, so depending on your hands one might work better or worse, but both of them are pretty decent for small cameras. I'm not going to complain. The tripod socket on the a6100 is very nicely placed, right in line with the lens, so with panorama situations, which it does have a dedicated mode, I did quickly try that out. Handheld, it worked decently well for how sloppy I was using it. Panoramas will be nice. Also with quick release plates, you're probably not going to have any issues on the a6100, which is very nice. With the M50 it is positioned decently well, but with how the battery door is, it's very long and it does interfere with a lot of my quick release plates. Placement of the video record button on the a6100 is not ideal. It's in an awkward spot. It's okay, it's nice that it at least has a dedicated button for video recording. Placement of the memory card slot on the A6100 is not ideal. It's pretty difficult to access. My fingers are very thin, but still it's hard to get that card out of the camera. Not ideal. With the M50 it is similar. It's not great, but definitely a little bit better for the placement of that memory card. A6100 has a built-in flash with a dedicated button you press to have it pop up. With the M50 it also has a flash, but you have to manually pull the flash up to get it to work. I do think the A6100 is a little bit more convenient. Both of them seem fine. It's nice that they do have that built-in flash. The A6100 uses the NP-F50 battery. It's used in a lot of their cameras. However, the A6600, which is quite a bit more expensive, uses their newer Z-type battery, so you're going to have a lot of power with that camera. This camera, however, is pretty decent with how many photos it is estimated to take per charge. Now with these videos, there's no way for me to test the actual amount of photos that it can take, and it really depends on how long you have the screen on and things like that. But the ratings on the two cameras, for the Sony you've got 380 to 420 photos per charge, and 70 to 125 minutes of video per charge. On the Canon you've got 235 to 370 and 85 to 130 minutes for video recording. I do think the Sony will last a little bit longer on the batteries than the M50. The nice thing about the Sony that it has over the M50 is that it can be charged through the USB port. Overall build quality, I do think the A6100 is a little better. It just feels more solid in the hands than the M50, but really at this level, you're not going to get amazing build quality with either camera. The A6100 and the M50 do not have built-in stabilization in the cameras, so if you want that feature, you definitely want to look at higher levels of camera to get that. These cameras are often sold with a kit lens, so we're going to look at the kit lenses a little bit. The Sony is definitely a lot smaller, which is super convenient with a camera like this. Also, it has a metal mount. That's very nice to see. Interesting feature of the Sony is that it has a motor-based zoom, so you use a little dial to zoom in and out. Also, a quick note, we'll look at the app, but basically you can use that in the app, which is pretty neat. Even though the A6100 is on the low end of this lineup now, it definitely still has a lot of features. I just barely scratched the surface when I was looking at them. The camera has face and animal eye detection. Of course, I wasn't able to check the animal stuff, but I did try to check out the face detection. In the camera with the menu system, there's just so many things that say face on it. I wasn't really sure if I was setting it up right. It seemed to work some of the time, but I think when you understand the camera and you really learn how to use it, it should be very good. What I tried was AFC tracking with the flexible spot M. Basically that allows you to adjust the spot if you want through the touchscreen, but it will also prioritize the faces based on some of the other settings. One thing to take note of is just a small quirk is with the animation in the interface. The A6100 does have that, so when you change a dial, it kind of shows you it moving from one setting to the next. With the M50, it does a lot less of that, which is very nice. When having the screen flipped up 180 degrees towards the lens, if you're doing selfie photos, the camera will automatically do a 3-second timer, which is nice to have in there. One big feature that the Sony A6100 has that the M50 does not have is memory recall. Basically, you can push settings into groups. If you want a sports mode, you want a mode for certain types of photography, you can push all those settings into those little groups and recall that. So know that it's in there, not in the M50. I did try out the Wi-Fi capabilities on the A6100 with Sony's Imaging Edge app. It's very quick to connect. The camera itself shows a little QR code. You use the phone to take a picture of that through their app, and it very quickly connects. No issues with that. Features wise in the app, it seems pretty decent. I was surprised it had full zoom with the lens, that specific lens that has the motor to zoom. So if you want to zoom through the app, that's very convenient to do. I didn't notice any way to do selectable focus, but it could have been how I had the camera set up. So once I had the app connected, I could switch modes on the camera itself and then it would show up in the app. So I went from video to manual photo mode, and I was also now able to adjust shutter speed, aperture, ISO. I do think the app needs more work, but it's got a good start to it. Let's go over the video features of the A6100, also with comparison to the M50. I do think the A6100 here definitely has an edge to the M50 on video. You can do 4K video with the full sensor, and it also has full autofocus. In the M50, you have a large crop on 4K, and it uses contrast detect autofocus, which is not good at all. So I don't think the M50 is a good option for 4K video. Also, the A6100 has zebras in video mode that basically allows you to check your exposure on screen. It's very convenient to have in there. M50 does not have that feature. The A6100 has levels for audio and video before recording and while recording. That's super convenient with video stuff. The M50 does not have that. Let's take a look at the video samples that I took with the camera. Here's a quick vlogging test. Sorry I did mess up with the M50 in this situation. I did not have image stabilization in the lens on or the digital. My mistake. However, I did want to put it in here with the A6100 clip. I did take a few sample photos with A6100. We'll do a full view of each photo and also 100% crop. I also took a few photos with the M50 and the A6100 side by side. You can look at those together. My personal thoughts on the camera, I do think it definitely has more features, especially in video mode than the M50. With the making of this video, it has a price premium over the M50. Does not have any rebates, of course, it's a new camera. However, if you do like the screen implementation of the M50 or the user interface with the full touch of the M50, those are things to consider. It's going to be based on personal preference. With photography especially, lenses are very important. So when we look at the systems themselves, you got the E-mount, which is APS-C and full frame together, and the EFM mount, which is just APS-C. Canon hasn't done a lot of support with the EFM mount. There are definitely quite a few decent lenses. The 32, the 22, I have both those, and the 11 to 22. Those are my three favorites. Also, Sigma just released 3 different prime lenses. I haven't had a chance to test them out, but that definitely adds to the EFM system. Now, there really aren't many long-range lens options, especially fast lenses for EFM. You can, of course, adapt lenses to that mount, but the same thing with the Sony A6100 has a large amount of lenses available, especially on the full frame side, of course, so you'll get native lenses, but they'll be full frame. They do have some APS-C lenses, but not a huge amount either. Also, companies like Sigma do have those lenses available for the E-mount. I think in general, on a mount perspective, you're going to have more options with E-mount, quite a few more options. So with these two cameras, A6100 and 50, I think price is a large consideration with them. So currently, the M50 is a better buy. It is, of course, missing some features, and things like 4K is definitely lacking in that camera. So depending on a specific feature or two, you probably want to go with the A6100 instead. So look at which features will work out for you specifically and the price. That was a look at the Sony A6100 with comparison to the Canon EOS M50. Hope you enjoyed the video. Again, thanks to Cameracraft in Rockford, Illinois for letting me try this camera out at their shop. Thanks again, I'm Scott Photography Bonsai.